The Buck Sexton Show.
But we are now joined to move our conversation to politics, more specifically campus politics. We're joined by Katherine Timpf. She is a reporter for National Review. She joins us now. Katherine, thank you for calling in.
Thanks for having me.
So please tell me about your piece here. Princeton student joking about how I pronounce Cool Whip is a microaggression. Just give us some of the down low on what's this all about.
Right, yeah. This kid, who of course, is the Ivy League, one of the best and the brightest. We're supposed to be discussing the most important issues. Decide to write almost 1,000 words about how upset he gets, how it's a microaggression when people make fun of him for saying Cool Whip. Because that's how he talks because of where he's from.
So because he's from the South, he says whip instead of whip. Is that what he says Cool Whip?
Right. And people make fun of him sometimes.
How dare they?
It's just too much to handle. I have no idea how he's still getting out of bed in the morning, to be honest.
Now, some people might be asking, well, okay, it's one guy. He's obviously very sensitive. But I wanted to talk to you, Katherine, about microaggression as a concept. Right? He's just applying this concept of microaggression to this specific issue, which is a particularly ridiculous one.
Right.
But what is tell us about microaggression. I know that's something you cover with what's going on campuses across the country. What's with microaggression?
I've heard them described a lot of ways, tiny paper cuts of oppression. I've heard them described on a...
Are you serious? Tiny paper cuts? Sorry. Tiny paper cuts of oppression. Continue.
Which that's actually on a Princeton Facebook page by Princeton students where they report microaggressions. It's how they describe them. It's basically, being offensive to someone without knowing it. I mean, pretty much anything can be a microaggression because it all depends on how somebody feels. And I think this is important, whether it's one kid or not, because it kind of illustrates that I haven't been exaggerating when I've been saying that we really are on the road to making literally anything be potentially taboo because someone thinks it might be a microaggression.
Is microaggression, by the way, is it in any way related to, or is it just a concept that has sort of sprung up into our discussions along the same time as the trigger warning, right? Which isn't it a trigger warning is basically a warning that there could be a microaggression in some class or some speech or something, right? The trigger warning is everybody be careful. This could be full of some microaggressions.
Right. Well, it's similar because it's kind of all depends on how someone feels. Like if someone gets upset and you didn't somehow know that was going to make them upset and give them a trigger warning, then it's your fault, and you're insensitive, and you're a horrible person, and you're ostracized from certain groups in society. And on some of these campuses, I just wouldn't talk. I wouldn't have a personality. I mean, I would be kind of afraid of somebody getting upset, and that is kind of where we're headed with that.
And the administrator, the administrators, they're in on this too, right? The administrators they're enforcing microaggression policy and trigger warnings. And this isn't just like a bunch of silly college kids have this idea and it's on Facebook and they accuse people of microaggression, right? This is now finding its way into actual campus policy so people can be penalized. I mean, this can have, I'm assuming you've seen cases where people have gotten in trouble for either a microaggression or lack of a trigger warning.
Of course. Well, because you're seen as a social justice hero for pointing out more and more things that, hey, I'm more culturally aware than you, and I can see how this might offend somebody. I'm not just, some bumpkin who doesn't understand anything. And so, people praise people for that. People feel good about themselves for that. But really what they're doing is, completely destroying the idea that we could ever reach an understanding among different cultures and different groups, because you can't have a real conversation when you're concerned about stuff like this.
Yeah, the places, the so-called bastions of free speech on campus, as we know, are doing everything in their power to limit it to what I call a totalitarian orthodoxy, but really, you could say just sort of left-wing talking points. I also wanted to ask you about the Obamacare, the professors at Harvard who have been very vocal about their support, some of them at least, for Obamacare. And now they've written this letter in the Harvard Crimson about how dare you raise our costs, our healthcare costs as part of the new policies. Do you think that this is something that could actually in any way chasten some of these professors? Or do you think that the hypocrisy, they could care less? They've got tenure.
Right. This isn't even really that bad for them, right? It just kind of makes them have a normal health plan they have to pay a deductible. They have to pay around 10% of their own costs. It's a lot worse for a lot of people. I think, it's just really funny because they were the ones saying, yeah, let's do this, that's great. And even that is too much for them to handle. I mean, this is a lot worse for a lot of people. But I think it's just really about, it's affected them personally.
Are you planning anything for this week on National Review we should keep an eye out for, Katherine?
Yeah, I'm like currently looking around the feminist internet right now for some of the most ridiculous things people are saying about manspreading. So that one will be out today.
Wait, manspreading?
People sitting with their legs apart. No, men sitting with their legs apart on the subway, which isn't just the way people sit. It's not just rude. It's actually oppressing me as a female, and it's a sign of an overarching patriarchal society.
So how a man sits on the subway is now part of the propagation of male patriarchy and female oppression. That's what the...
Right, yeah. The MTA is actually getting involved with a campaign with this.
I'm sorry, the government's getting involved in this too?
Right. Exactly.
What qualifies as a manspread, just so I know?
I guess, I don't know. I mean, it depends on who you talk to. Some might say, you sit with your legs all the way together. Maybe everyone should just cross their legs. Maybe everyone should sit in the subway on the fetal position. Well, actually, only men should sit in the fetal position because it's really a cultural issue about the patriarchy, and I'm being oppressed every time I go to work.
I had no idea. I had heard briefly about this manspreading thing. I didn't know that the MTA was actually getting involved. Well, Katherine's going to have a piece on National Review on that. You can also give her. What's your Twitter handle, Katherine?
KC Timpf.
KC Timpf. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate you calling in.
All right. Thank you.
The Buck Sexton Show.